Right. Thank you very much, Natasha, for again for organizing this and allowing us to give a little talk about our program. My name is Korosh Kianizad. I'm going to be joined by our educational coordinator, Kate Sedore, and Associate Chair Undergraduate Studies, Thierry Mallevaey. Unfortunately, Dr. Gomerman was unable to attend, so she does send her her regards. I'm hoping everybody can see this and hear me, because I can't see me, but I'm assuming that you can hear me. So I'll give you a little bit of information about our program and why you want to do graduate work with us. And then we'll talk about the specific programs in the graduate department, as well as some undergraduate information as well. So for those that don't know who we are a citywide academic unit. We're fairly distributed across multiple sites across the city. So we're found in hospitals downtown, UTSC and Sunnybrook up in the northern regions of the city. We have a comprehensive training program. We've got undergraduate training, graduate and postdoctoral training. We are a research powerhouse when it comes to immunology basic science work. We are, in fact, the leading immunology program in Canada. We are one of two, I believe, that that solely provide an immunology training. A lot of programs across the country focus on microbiology and immunology. We are one of the few that focus just on immunology in Canada, and we're one of the top ones in the world. As I said, we have a tremendous research foundation going for us in our department. We've had over 1,100 publications in the last 10 years. Those publications have generated more than 32,000 citations. We've got and continue to receive greater than $20 million in operating grant support for all of our faculty members. We were given in the last few cycles of the CFI competitions a $15 million award for the Host Microbiome Research Network that was established at the MSB. Right now, we're about 110 graduate students, so we are a fairly small, tight-knit community compared to other larger graduate programs in the faculty, and we're about 220 postdocs across all of our labs. As I mentioned, we're distributed far and wide across Toronto. We have 59 active research faculty members associated with our department. You can find labs at SickKids, at the MSB, Sinai, Sunnybrook, UHN, throughout downtown, Scarborough, Women's College, pretty much all over the place. So we have coverage across the entire city. So getting to our graduate programs, we have two streams in our graduate program. We have a non-thesis applied master's stream, and we have a thesis-based fundamental PhD stream. I will speak to you about the master's program, and then my colleague Kate will step in and describe the PhD program for you. So this master's program is the same, but it's also different. So how is it different than a master's program in biochemistry, physiology, or any other department in the faculty of medicine? The projects don't necessarily have to be hypothesis driven. So your project can do traditional, discovery-based research, but you can also work on more technical projects. So if a lab has a model that they want to optimize, or they want to establish a new model, or there's a technique that you want to get going in the lab, those kind of projects are totally within the scope of this program. As I said, this program is not thesis based. You still do basic science lab work. You're at the bench. You're in one lab, and you kind of continue your research throughout your studies. But instead of waiting till the end to produce one giant thesis, you break up your results, I guess, milestones, into 3 reports and 3 presentations as you progress. So it's the same end. You achieve the same end result, but you get to it in a different fashion. Another way that our program is different on the master's side is that it's fixed length. So you know exactly when you start, you know exactly when you're going to finish. The standard entry students, for those who don't already have some training in immunology, finish the program in 6 terms or 2 years. Students who are immunology specialists or majors and or have completed some 4th year courses with us in the department are eligible to do the program in 4 terms, depending on eligibility requirements. But it's a maximum of 6 terms or 2 years. So it's a very structured program. In terms of the program structure, as you can see, students in standard entry span 2 full years. There's a core set of courses, in 1450, 1550, 1650. And those 3 courses are basically the research components. So the work that you do in the lab is part of that umbrella. You're still in the same lab as you complete those courses, but at the end of those is when those reports are generated. So at the end of winter year 1, you give a little presentation and write a report. At the end of summer year 1, you write another presentation report. End of year 2, winter, you write a 3rd and final report. In the first year, you've got to select 2 of 4 mandatory courses, so molecular, developmental, clinical, or immunotherapy. In year 2, you get 1 FCE of elective credits, so you can pretty much go and pick whatever course you're interested in. That's the beauty of our master's program. It's very flexible. So if you have an interest in physiology or biochemistry or data analysis or stats or public health, you can certainly take electives in those courses as well to complement and supplement your training. At the end of year 2, the summer term is sort of a free, quote unquote, term. You're pretty much done all of your academic requirements. The summer is where you would put your training to use in a practical placement. You can either do this placement on campus or off campus. So if you want to stay in your lab and continue your work, you're totally welcome to, depending on what your end career goals are. Or if you found an internship or placement outside of the lab that you want to take up during that summer, it's also totally up to you. So that final summer is a bit of a flexible term where you can go and put to use your skills that you've learned in a environment that is best suited for your career development. And with the advanced standing program, essentially the first 2 terms get lopped off because completing the undergraduate version of those courses is the requirement to gain advanced standing. So if you've taken a 4th year molecular, developmental, clinical, or immunotherapy courses and have done a thesis project, you would be eligible for advanced standing and kind of come in at the summer year 1 mark. So the question that I get asked frequently is, do I get to work in the lab? And as I've mentioned, yes, you do. This master's program is very similar to a traditional basic science master's program. The only difference is how it's packaged. The other big question that I get is, what can I do with this degree? Our program has been now running for about 5 years, and we've had about 50 alumni coming successfully graduating. And they've landed in all forms of different industries. We've had students end up at banks as analysts. We've had students end up as consultants with biotech companies. Some have ended up at medical school. Some are analysts at marketing companies. One student founded a biotech startup, VivaVax, 3 or 4 years ago. Many students have ended up at Fluidigm in various marketing R&D roles. Recently, a lot of students have been transitioning to our PhD program and other PhD programs. So if you do complete the applied masters, you're totally ready and trained and well positioned to do PhD studies as well. So it's a very diverse outcome for all of our alumni, and they've all been successful and are doing quite well. In terms of the funding for the applied immunology program, it's a little different than our PhD program. At its core, your tuition will be covered in the applied immunology program. So in year 1 and year 2, you'll get in the fall or spaced out, depending on your lab's payment schedule, a stipend equal to that year's tuition. So your tuition is taken care of. Right now, it's about $8,000 total. At the end, that placement period that I mentioned at the end of year 2, that is a paid placement. So whether you stay in the lab or whether you go out and find a job, an internship outside of the lab, you will get paid that summer. Our in the lab rate is about $2,400, $2,500 a month, in that range. So up to $10,000 if you stay for the full 4 months for that summer. All right, and I will now turn it over to Kate, who will take you home with the rest of the graduate programs.
All right, thanks, Korosh. So hi, everybody. I'm going to talk about the PhD program, which is sort of under our branch that we like to call fundamental immunology. So our PhD program is kind of your traditional thesis-based doctoral program. It's an advanced research program intended to reflect a level of training consistent with your ability to function as an independent research scientist. It is thesis-based, as I mentioned, and a successful completion for the program entails a little bit of coursework and then your independent research, which will typically result in research of publishable quality, not a requirement to publish for the degree, but typically our students do get at least one paper, if not more, at the end of their program. So here's just a bit of a timeline about what the program looks like. Our time to completion is about 5 to 6 years at this point. We're working hard to get that closer to the 5-year mark. We offer a rotation period in the PhD program. So that means if you enter the program, you have the option of spending 1 month in 3 different labs during the first term. And we really, it's not mandatory, but if you are entering as a PhD student, we definitely recommend that you take advantage of the rotation system because you're going to be in the lab for a while. It's a bit of a time commitment, and we want to make sure that you're finding the best fit for you. And that means, you know, both in terms of the projects that are going on in the lab, but also the people who are in the lab, the supervisor you're going to be working with, the culture in the lab, the other students you'll be with. We want to make sure that it's a good, comfortable home for you. So we definitely recommend that you do that rotation. And then after that, you will make your lab decision and sort of hit the ground running in January. Decisions made in December, and then we have holiday break. So come January, you'll set off on your project. And for the first 2 committee meetings will sort of be, you know, getting you off the ground on your project. And at the second committee meeting is where you're going to prepare for our PhD qualification step. So all students in the PhD program in year 2 will go through a qualification exam. And that is where a committee, an exam committee made up of your supervisor, committee members, and a couple of external examiners from within and outside of the department will assess your proposal for your PhD research, and you will defend that proposal in an oral exam. And then provided that you pass that process, then you're well on your way to continuing your research and obtaining your PhD. At that point, if you get to that qualification step and it's decided that just the PhD is not working out for you for whatever reason, we do offer the option to graduate with an MSc at that stage. Now, this is, we want to sort of, we call this our off-ramp or our sort of parachute. So it's not, it's meant to be a last resort. It's meant to be for those students who, you know, thought they were in for the long haul PhD, but something happened. It's just not for them. So we want to give you the chance to leave with a master's degree at that point, as opposed to having invested those 2 years and not getting to leave with anything. So that's what happens in year 2. And then, as I say, the completion typical completion time for the PhD is 5 to 6 years in our department. So in terms of funding, we're very fortunate that this is a fully funded program. So all PhD fundamental students will receive a living allowance that is, the amount is set by the Faculty of Medicine's harmonized funding agreement. And it covers your tuition and your fees, plus a living allowance of about $22,000. So for this year, for example, for a domestic student, it's this $30,687.02 number that they will take home. And out of that, they will have, again, about $8,000 to pay their tuition. A great thing at U of T in the last few years is that they have decided that international students will pay the same tuition rate as domestic students, which is excellent. We get to, you know, it gives us the opportunity to bring in a lot more international students, and it takes away that added burden of that huge fee differential for those international students. So the only difference between the funding is that international students pay an additional $700-ish for health insurance, and that is reflected in their stipend amount as well. So now I'm going to talk about how you apply for all these graduate programs. So Our admission requirements for each of our programs are as follows. For the PhD, we look for a 4-year life sciences BSc with at least an A- in the final 2 years. We're going to look for a strong background in immunology. So usually we would find that with some 4th-year immunology courses. And we look for strong research experience. So if you've done 450, for example, or a major research project, that's excellent. If you've not done either of those things, but you've had lots of time working in a lab, you've worked on projects, that type of thing, then that may make you competitive as well. For the MSc in Applied Immunology side, also looking for a 4-year Life Sciences BSc, and we need a B+ in the final 2 years of your undergrad. Over here on this side for the applied, we need a little bit of immunology knowledge, so not quite as intense as the PhD side, but maybe some 2nd, 3rd year courses in immunology. And we need a little bit of lab experience on this side. So you don't need to have done a thesis, you don't need to have spent all that much time in a lab, but basically we want to know, if we dropped you into a lab, would you kind of know your way around? Would you kind of have the lay of the land and be comfortable and know sort of where things are and what things are, that type of thing. So just a bit of lab experience on that side. In terms of the components in the application, we'll need your CV, of course, a letter of intent. And the letter of intent is really where we want to hear from you about why you want to study immunology, why you want to study it with us, what's brought you to this area of interest, and just your goals for why you want to study immunology. We will need 3 letters of reference from people familiar with your academic and research capabilities. So we get a lot of questions about who these should come from, and I mean, faculty who know you well are probably going to be the best references, the most valuable references, let's say. If they can really speak to your academic ability, your potential for being an excellent graduate student, that type of thing. Even a postdoc in a lab would be fine. Just really someone who knows you well, as opposed to someone who maybe taught you for one course, for example, would be a more valuable reference for us. The references come in the form of a web form. So your referees will receive a link to follow to a web form that has a few questions and then a place to cut and paste their letter. We also need transcripts, of course. For all of you as U of T students, an Acorn printout is acceptable for the application period, for the time of application, or a scan of an official document of an official transcript is fine. At the time of making our offer, we will request an official transcript at that time. But at the time of application, you can just upload an Acorn printout and that'll be fine. Okay, so the place to apply is through the Graduate Studies, School of Graduate Studies online application system, which is right here. And if you go to uoft.me/apply to immunology, you'll be able to find all of our information in more detail, and as well as an admissions FAQ. In terms of dates and deadlines, this year we've set an application fee deadline that's a little earlier than the application deadline itself. So please make sure to pay your application fee no later than January 1st, 2021. And your application itself, along with all supporting documents, including references, will be due January 15th. That's for the standard entry MSc and for the PhD program. If you are interested in the advanced standing MSc, please be sure to pay your fee no later than February 15th, and all of your documents and application will be due March 1st. And I just want to mention the reason that we're setting this apart is mainly because your referees will not receive the link to fill out their form until you've paid the fee. So we want to just make sure we're leaving a little bit of buffer room. That being said, please don't leave it that long. I think Adriana mentioned start now, give your referees a lot of time. We recommend at least 6 weeks before the deadline that you're approaching your referees, but more time is always better because they do have a lot of letters to write. And as Adriana said, you don't want to be stressing out about it. So if you need any assistance with applying, or you have any questions about either program, please feel free to contact me or Korosh. I'm at graduate.immunology at utoronto.ca, and you can get Korosh at applied.immunology. And with that, I'll be happy to take questions. We also have Korosh here who can answer questions about the applied. And we have Dr. Thierry Mallevaey, who is our Associate Chair Undergraduate Studies, who is also on our graduate committee and helps with graduate admissions. So we are all ready for your questions.
Kate, do you want to?
Sure. Okay, so Korosh, this one's for you. For the Applied Immunology program, how many hours are we expected to be in the lab per week?
So Sonia, thank you very much for the question. It varies. In first year, So this year, the pandemic has kind of thrown everything out of whack. So we're optimistic that by fall of 21, we can get back to a little bit more normal cadence. For first year, we would expect about 20 to 25 hours per week in the lab because there's a bit of coursework that needs to happen. In the summer, 40 hours a week because you're pretty much have no other academic commitments other than your research. And then in year 2, it's about 30 to 40 hours because your course load does go down.
Okay, so we have a question from Roheen saying, fourth year student in bachelor's at U of T. I'm an international student. I'm interested in the MSc in applied immunology. Am I eligible or can I only apply to the PhD program?
Rohan, thank you very much for the question. Unfortunately, at this time, the Applied Immunology program is unable to accept international students, and we encourage all international students to apply to our PhD program.
Thierry, I wonder if you could speak to this one. Lauren's asking, are there values or qualities you particularly want to see in the reference letters?
Thanks for the question, Lauren. So in the reference letters, it's difficult to say because you're not writing the reference letters, like your referees are writing the letters. What we use this for at the time of admissions is to get to know you a little bit better. Are you somebody that's reliable? Are you somebody that is hardworking? Are you someone that is smart? We want somebody else's opinion that knows who you are to tell us who you are, to make sure that the program is going to be a good fit for you and that you're going to thrive in your graduate studies. Now, it's a little bit about the same for your letter of intent. What we want to know in this, when we review those applications, is, I would say, what you've been doing so far as your education, your research activities, if you had any, your volunteer activities, and why you did that. And we also want to know why you would choose a graduate program in immunology, what you would like to do and why. So we want to see what you're made of and why you are interested in research and graduate studies.
Thanks, Thierry. Korosh, one for you again from Felicia. Is IM 450 still required for the advanced MSc given COVID? She says, I'm an IM major and applied for the program, but was not able to get a placement.
Felicia, thank you for the question. IM 450, yes and no. 450 specifically isn't required for advanced standing, but you must have completed an equivalent of it. So if you did a senior project in a different department, then yes, that would make you eligible in addition to the two of the 1400 series courses that we've got in the department. But if you haven't completed the senior project, unfortunately, standard entry would be the route for you.
Thanks, Korosh. So Valerie is asking, do students who've completed the applied MSc apply to the fundamental immunology? Sorry, my chat's jumping. Do students who've completed the MSc apply to the fundamental immunology program as their PhD? So I go ahead, Korosh.
Yeah, okay. Valerie, again, thank you for the question. Yes, so what would happen is that you would have to finish the master's and start the PhD. You would apply to the PhD program in your final year of the master's, so year 2. We do have an expedited entry for applied immunology students into our PhD, where in the decision to admit or not admit would be made at your final presentation. But you are also able to apply with the regular cohort that would be happening in January as well.
Great. So Shannon is asking, if you apply to advanced standing, does one of the reference letters need to be the current PI you have in the immunology department that you plan on staying with for the master's?
Shannon, thank you as well for your question. In general, yes. If you have done work in a lab for an extended period of time and the reference, you don't have a reference from your supervisor or the person who was overseeing your work, it is a red flag. Not just for us, but for any department, any sort of thing that you apply for. It's always good to make sure you have a reference from the person who immediately supervised you, because not doing so just raises some questions.
Right. Okay, Feng Hao is asking, is it possible for international students to enroll in the applied MSc after the COVID situation? I'm in my 3rd year now and looking forward to apply to the program next year.
Feng Hao as well, thank you for your question. At this time, the inability to accept international students to the applied MSc is expected to be ongoing.
Okay, JD is asking, for reference letters, can they be from any academic department or are science-based faculties preferred? Thierry, maybe do you want to speak to that?
Take that one?
So the best is letters from supervisors that do research as close as possible to what we do in the department. So biomedical research, it can be from immunology, biochemistry, molecular genetics, really anything. If you did research in a different area like sociology or whatever, it's good as well, providing it's somebody that has a good knowledge of your capacities in a sort of a research environment. So it's really about getting to know your capacities more intimately from somebody that had the opportunity to work with you and see how you're working.
Thanks, Thierry. So I can take this one. We have a question from Bianca. What kind of TA opportunities are available to graduate students in the IM department? So we do have, it varies year to year, but I'd say there's about 35 or so positions in various undergrad courses. So there's a bunch of positions, of course, in IM 250, which is our very large introductory course. Essentially all of the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year courses require TAs. You're more than welcome to apply, especially as incoming students. I will say that it's less likely as a first year student that you would land a TA position right away, but certainly feel free to apply. And it's rare that as you go on in the program, if you're really wanting a TA position, you are most likely to get one eventually. You may just have to keep applying for a couple of years. So Korosh, Sonia's asking for advanced standing applied MSc. Would the program start in summer 2021?
Sonia, yes. The program basically starts, for advanced standing, it starts pretty much right after exams finish at the end of April. So the first week in May, you're registered and you hit the ground running and off you go, which is why completing IM 450 is one of the requirements, because then you would more often than not have a lab lined up. So you're able to just get going and started. You do have to have a lab lined up as if you want to apply for advanced standing, which is again why 450 is the requirement, because that's the easiest way to make sure you've got a lab to start with. If you've done a project in a different department, that's totally fine too, but it would be up to you to make sure you've got a supervisor for May. But yeah, to just answer your question, Sonia, it's right when you finish at the end of April. The program for advanced standing starts in May 2021.
Great. I see Bianca has a follow-up question about the TA, so I'm just going to jump in and answer that. So she's asking, are we able to TA in courses that are not in the IM department, example Bio 120? Absolutely. You're welcome to apply to any TA positions that you find anywhere across the university. The way that it works is each department does its own hiring. So as an immunology student, for example, the IM department would only be hiring for IM courses, but you're welcome to apply to other departments, and they may hire students from outside their department. And I think we're just about out of time. So one more question for you, Korosh from Canal. Are placements in the applied immunology programs offered by the department, or would we need to find one on our own? Does it depend on whether it's on or off campus?
Canal, again, thank you as well for your question. The placements are not guaranteed by the department. You would generally need to find one on your own. If you're going to stay on campus, it's usually in the lab that you're doing your work in. To go off campus, you'll have to find it on your own. You will have graduate professional development training throughout the master's. So we will kind of help you how to find these positions. We will try to utilize our contacts as best we can, but the onus is more on the student to find their own placement.
You can answer that last one.
Okay. So the question is, could you comment on how we get assigned a supervisor? In my understanding, and as MSc students, we are not required to necessarily find our own supervisor, but instead might be assigned one. Do we have any choice in the assignment, or is it based? So Bianca, you're not assigned a supervisor. What happens is that if you are made an offer of admission, we will give you a list of faculty who are looking to recruit for that coming September. And then using that list, you would go and find, you would contact the supervisors and see who you would like to work with, and you would interview them, they would interview you, and you would see who the best match is. Part of my job is to help you find a supervisor. So if you're having difficulties, I kind of step in and help you through that. We do not admit more students than there are spaces. So if you're made an offer of admission, know that you will find a supervisor.
Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna stop recording.